This episode of the Better To podcast is brought to you by Kitty Mystic and Needom, author of the Better To Burnout series, which includes her latest releases of Fairy Tales and I Love You and Is Love Just Another High. Welcome to the Better To podcast. I'm your host, Needom, or Donna, as some people call me. Today's guest is Wajid Hassan. Wajid was on our show, I think season 1 or season 2. And I invited him back because, well, he had some expertise that I wanted to dig into a little bit more. So we have a conversation about the metaphysical. So if that's your jam, stay tuned. Hi, gang. Donna from the Better To podcast here. If you've listened to my show, you know that it always sounds great. That's thanks to the guys at Third Ear Audio Productions. Third Ear Audio helps podcasters, broadcasters, musicians, and business owners get their important messages out to their audience. Rich and the Third Ear Audio team are easy to work with. They're efficient in understanding that your message is important to you. With quick turnaround and a true caring of your needs, Third Ear Audio is your go-to for any audio message. Reach out to Third Ear Audio at 312-388-5596. Rich and his team will deliver for you. That's 312-388-5596. Or you can email them at info@thirdearaudio.com or visit them on the web at www.thirdearaudio.com. Hi, Wajid. How are you doing today?
Hey, Donna. Doing good. How are you doing?
I'm doing good. It's been a while since we talked last. And since we last talked, I've done some exploring and I was like, there's somebody I talked to before that I know would have some interesting takes on things that I have recently studied and taught, as well as explained to other people. And I wanted, because I'm no expert and nobody ever is totally an expert, but it's always good to have that other opinion of a like-minded person. So I want to dive right into talking a little bit about past lives, because many years ago I had a dream. And I ended up in another dream I had not too long ago, about 2 years ago. This dream showed up, this past life thing, because in this past life, in this dream I had back in, I think, 2007, I was at this fairgrounds, this park. It was like a World's Fair exhibit had been there. And I was on a double yellow Ferris wheel. And in this dream, which felt very real, I was on this Ferris wheel. I got to near the top and suddenly I was falling. Now, the interesting thing is, usually when you fall in a dream, you wake up. I didn't wake up. I didn't wake up for a few minutes. So, I looked it up at that moment, and sure enough, back in Dallas in 1955, there was a state fair. And at one point at the Dallas Fairgrounds, they did actually have a World's Fair there. So everything that I saw in my dream, and I had been there once in my life, in this incarnation, I had been there, I think, back in the early 90s. And I didn't go to that side of the park, so nothing triggered. So when I looked this up, this girl fell, and her and 2 other girls fell. She died. Okay, fair enough. So fast forward to 2 years ago, and in the middle of a different dream, I step outside of this building I'm in, and I'm like, oh, look, there's a double yellow Ferris wheel like the one from my past life. I have to take pictures of it. And so this sent me down a rabbit hole. And I went and did this whole investigation more into this. And the fact of the matter is, she didn't die when she hit the ground. She lived for a bit afterwards. And so I sat there, and somebody had told me in a reading not too long before this, she's like, the way your body is jacked up, you must have been a soldier or something. Well, falling from 92 feet in the air would do that. And in the past life, what we don't talk about, and this is why I wanted to bring you on too, is because in past lives, we don't talk about how we can bring those injuries into our bodies. So
Absolutely.
So, yeah, I mean, it was just very weird because all these little pieces, and there were similarities about her mother and about my life and her life, and like where our nodes are. And granted, it's Western astrology, but I have the Aries North node. She had a Libra North node. So her mother committed suicide and so did mine. So it was like there's some very much these commonalities. And she died on October 14th. I was born October 12th, and I was born October 13th. And there's actually 12 years between us, between her death and my birth. So it's very weird. And I know people are listening going, this is kind of batshit crazy, but it's weird, especially when I lay out all the case evidence.
Well, see, the thing is, you see, it's weird for other people because people don't have the information about reincarnation and past lives. And there's nothing weird at all. I totally believe in your experience. Recently my sister told me that she had a dream where she was in France and she was thrown off the bridge on the River Seine and drowned. And she remembered that. And then she got to go to France herself and went to the same bridge and realized that, yeah, that was her that was thrown off the bridge. So, me, you, my sister, and millions of people around the world have had these kind of experiences, these dreams of past lives, and even dreams of the future. But we'll concentrate on reincarnation and past lives here. The worst thing that the Orthodox religions have done is hide the truth of reincarnation to the masses. The Christian religion in AD 450, prior to that, actually taught reincarnation. And then with the meetings of the elders of Constantinople in AD 450, they changed the teachings of reincarnation that Christianity taught and put in the one life to live in order so that they could control the masses by saying, look, either you conform to what we tell you in our dogma, or you will go to heaven or you will go to hell. And it's not only the Christian religion, but a couple of other Orthodox religions that have done the same. So there's millions and millions of people who've had these experiences and their ministers and priests can't explain it.
No.
Reincarnation, Donna, is a fact. It's not a theory. And I think it's important that, your shows like yourself and other shows that are bringing this forward, it's one of the truths that's been hidden from the masses, and it needs to be reintroduced again, because there's so many factors that's going to be positive when the true teachings of reincarnation are given to the masses again. And they will be, because you can only hide truth for a certain while, but karma eventually catches up and the truth is finally exposed. So I think there's a lot of people questioning their religion, a lot of people questioning what, reincarnation, it answers the inequality of mankind. Let's face it. If there was, there must be a punishing God if we only have one life to live and somebody's born rich, somebody's born poor, somebody's a virtuoso in violin while somebody is, has cancer when they're 2 years old. It explains all these things. These are occurrences that we bring from our past lives. Don't you agree?
Oh, yeah. There's certain things when I look at that, when I look at the fact that, why I was, I've had issues with health since I was a kid. My body, in fact, which really makes a lot of sense with the whole falling, because when I was a kid, my mom put me, the best way to describe it was they were called cables to me. But if you've seen Forrest Gump and he's running in those braces, I had that for a very brief time because my leg used to turn in, which would be prime example for a fall from, such a great height that you were not properly balanced. Right. And, when you look at people that have birthmarks, the birthmarks are usually from where they died. And most people don't get that because, and it's very true. I will go along with the statement about religion is equal to control. It really is, because if we make you believe that if you do this, you're bad. But even now, and that's the weird thing about now, is that people are touting about the Bible, but yet and they used to tout what 10, 20 years ago, what would Jesus do? But now it's like, oh no, that's not right. Don't go along with those teachings. So they're trying to play it both ways, but it really all it is about control. It's not about religion anymore. It's just about control.
Well, I think the truth of reincarnation, there's so much evidence. You just have to go on YouTube and look at the evidence of there was a young lad who remembered being a fighter pilot, and
The fashion
crashing
designer.
into, and so there's the evidence is overwhelming. And when the evidence is overwhelming, eventually it's been told by, the master that I follow, that the people who have hidden the truth of reincarnation will be replaced by those unorthodox people who will reintroduce reincarnation. One thing that the truth of reincarnation will do is it will make people think very seriously before they go to war. Like, who am I fighting? It could have been a brother or a sister or a mother or father, because we're all interrelated.
Right.
And that's the truth of reincarnation. There is no such thing as a particular race or a country, because we're all races, we're all countries, we're all religions, we're all sexes. There's no guarantee that in my next life I'll be born as a male.
Right.
So we go through all these experiences primarily for what? So that eventually we can gain enlightenment and, get away from the ignorance. But it's countless lives of experiences that we have to go through. And, people who are mired in their orthodoxy and that their God is better or their flag is better, they're just living in ignorance.
Mm-hmm.
Because I think the greatest sin on this planet is ignorance. Because if people were enlightened, you wouldn't have all this mass murder and killing and racism and wars and all that. And it's based on individuality. It's based on devotion to a country or a religion, and it's all lies. It's all based on lies. So eventually, I'm of the firm belief now that there's going to be a great change that's going to occur on this planet for the better, even though things seem to be very, very bad. And thousands of people recollecting their past lives, and it's something that religion, even their parents, young children remember their past lives and they talk about it, and their parents like pie and say, oh, that's just your imagination. And when it isn't, especially when they're young, they remember their past lives. So I'm 100% behind you in regards to past lives and reincarnation. The only thing that I'm a little, hesitant about is that there's enough that we have to deal with in this life. Then if we investigate our past lives, I don't want to know that I was a soldier in battle that killed people, that kind of stuff. I think eventually when we're advanced enough and we're adepts, then we can recollect our past lives in a more balanced way. But if we found out, we weren't, none of us were Queen of Sheba, or, somebody had to clean out the horse stables, So, people are infatuated sometimes with past lives, but I think it's important to just focus on this life. But I think experiences like yours, experiences that other people have, I think are designed to help you in this life as well. Like you said, well, why was I born with physical challenges? Mm-hmm. And then you get that dream of falling, from a Ferris wheel. And so, sometimes the answers are given to you while you're going through these challenges.
There is something interesting, too. So when I was a little kid, my dad would take me to fairs around Louisiana. And the only time I would ever go on a Ferris wheel would be if it was caged in. And everybody's like, why? And I'm like, because if it falls, I'll be protected. And this, I would just inherently say out of my mouth, no prompting, no reason for it, but I would say it. And when I had just graduated high school and we went to the state fair in Louisiana, and my best friend at the time, she's like, we're going to get on the Ferris wheel. I'm like, I don't want to get on the Ferris wheel. She's like, we're going to get on the Ferris wheel. Okay. So I acquiesce and I get on the Ferris wheel. We get to the top. And I start freaking out. And she's like, if you're going to scream, I'm going to rock it. And I'm like, don't. And she did. And I was in a severe panic. And now looking back,
Yeah.
it makes sense. But then both those comments made no sense. They had no context. But after, like I said, after digging in, and normally you don't get the grace of digging in, but there was a reason I was supposed to figure out all these little pieces. And
Yeah.
something else I want to touch on, because you said, kids remember these things. And when I teach intuition, I talk about the fact that as kids, we are highly intuitive. We will know things, and we are taught, whether it be by the school, by the church, by our parents, that you don't know what you're talking about.
Right.
But so we're taught not to trust our own gut at that point because you're supposed to conform.
Yeah, and and intuition, especially with women are more psychic than men. Intuition is what I've said is one of the greatest light detectors that was natural light detectors ever given to man. And if we don't follow our intuition and our guidance from the still small voice, it gets us in a lot of trouble. And so again, that's another aspect of enlightenment, as you can call it, or advancement that people will give. They will start listening more and more to their sixth sense as opposed to their five senses, And so these promptings, in your case, certain experiences that happened,
Mm-hmm.
and if people follow their guidance, these are designed to help you in your current life and the challenges. Because let's face it, everybody on the planet is going through some kind of challenge right now.
Oh, yeah.
These are just very trying times, but we're never left alone. And I just as we have a lower power, I also believe we have a higher power that guides us. And I also feel, bring up the subject of deja vu. Everybody has deja vu, and they kind of remember. And so I'm in the strong belief that sometimes our life path is kind of laid out on us. It's not handed us on a plate, but certain experiences, I think, have been given to us by our higher power before we even reincarnated. It's been said that our higher power, before we reincarnate, actually chooses our mother and our father and our environment and our birthplace, so that we gain those experiences that we need in order to evolve. And so, those are kind of hard pills to swallow when you realize that maybe, like I had an abusive father, and I was like, why did I pick my father? It was so that I could have that experience in order to grow or evolve. So they're not necessarily nice experiences, but then some of them are also nice experiences. So each individual karmic pattern determines what you're going to be in this life. And again, another aspect of truth is we get exactly what we deserve if you believe in karma as well as reincarnation. So we all come with whatever we bought from our past life.
Mm-hmm.
And so, but at the same time, there's the children that are born to rich families, and they're given the finest education, the nicest schools, and they don't excel in any ways. And then there's some that were born in poverty who have risen up above all their challenges and become great men and women. So there's reasons sometimes why it's not necessarily, it may be an advantage to be born with challenges, because once you've overcome those challenges, not only do you have the experience, but you can also teach other people these experiences.
Very true. And when you're talking about karma, it's interesting because when my mom passed, I guess about several years later, I actually went to the person that taught me how to read tarot. She also was a medium. And so I asked her this was before I got into my own gifts, but I asked her, I said, can you look into my mom? And she's like, your mom always finds somebody to help her check out. She never wants to complete her karma. She always finds a way to check out, and she will have somebody else do it before her, whether it's providing her the means or actually doing it. I'm like, okay. So see, And this is the thing when if we don't want to face our karma, if we don't want to go through those lessons and we check out, then we're just setting ourselves up to come back and do the same thing over again. And nobody really looks at that.
Exactly. And, that's why people have to be careful with suicide because, because you probably reincarnate and have to go through those experiences again, maybe go through suicide again. I don't know, but there's some very, very painful experiences. People are born with cancer and, people are deformed and yet, like I say, I sometimes think that the challenges in life, my greatest advancements have been overcoming my weaknesses or my karmic challenges that I had to go through. Some of them very painful, but I'm better for it now. I'm a little bit more wiser, more experienced because of those challenges. And so, my spiritual master said, "There's only one reason that we're on this planet, and we're not here to suffer." And the suffering is a cause of being manipulated, molded by forces that are more powerful than us, that manipulate us since and we conform to this kind of lifestyle that we have to go to school and work and retire and die, which is just basic materialism. But what my master said is the only reason we're here is to gain enlightenment, that this planet is a beautiful classroom. It's a gigantic spacecraft that's revolving around the sun, that's revolving around the galaxy. The solar system is revolving around the galaxy, and we're part of this this beautiful planet, which has given us life. And people just abuse it. They pollute the planet. They pollute the planet. They cause wars, and these are all man-made things. But they're not our destiny. They're not our heritage. Our heritage is to follow the real truths of nonviolence, living the right life, following spiritual laws, not necessarily religious laws, but basic spiritual laws that the great teachers like Jesus and Buddha and Patanjali and Krishna, they all had the same teachings, but not many people listen to them, and that's why we're in the state that we're in now, because we're just mired in materialism and thinking that material things are going to give us, and they do give us temporary security, temporary pleasure, but then in the end, what needs to be really fed is the soul. Because when we die, our body is clay, goes back into the earth, and now our soul goes on to these other different realms to gain experience, and then we come back and reincarnate and go through these experiences, and it's an endless cycle.
Well, and
till we reach the point, like the great masters did, where they reach cosmic consciousness, nirvana, ascension, where we can move on and go to higher planes. So that's our heritage, not all this suffering that we're going through. That's made by us, not by our higher power.
Well, that's the thing, when you're talking about the consumerism, how we want the material, we go through this cycle, and that cycle perpetuates as we get older to raise fear and anxiety because we don't have enough money, we don't have enough this, we don't have enough that. But if we actually trusted, we would know. You said you didn't want to talk about future dreams, but I have to kind of do that because there was a situation after my husband passed where I was terrified about losing my house. I was terrified that I was going to lose my house. I ended up having this nightmare. And I always know when my dreams are kind of twisted when I have a tornado show up. So this tornado shows up in this dream and it's just crazy. It's coming. It keeps coming at the house. And my husband's in the house with me. He's already passed, but in the dream, he's alive and well. And I'm like, we need to get in the basement. He's like, no, we don't. I'm like, we need to get in the basement. True fact, he did do this one time when we had a tornado coming. He wasn't going to get in the basement and I made him. And we were fine. It didn't touch down. But so in this dream, I'm like, we need to get to the basement. He's like, no, it's going to be fine. And I'm like, no, we need to go. And he grabbed my hand and we went back to the dining room where we have a sliding glass door. And he opened up the curtains and he's like, look, everything is fine. And the truth was, I would see a year later that everything was fine. But I was so caught up in this chaos for like 6 months that this was going to be me losing my house, that he had already come to me in a dream saying, "You're going to be fine. It's going to be fine." And I don't think we always really pay attention to those dreams. It wasn't until after I was okay that I could look back and go, okay, so I had nothing to worry about, but because of the fear and anxiety from how we're taught, I didn't trust.
Well, again, that experience, sleep is when part of the consciousness actually leaves the body and travels to the other planes unconsciously. But sometimes, people on the other side do connect with us. And in that case, where your husband gave you assurance, my mother, my father passed away a few years back, and he's always in her dreams, and telling her, well, when are you going to come join me?
You're like,
and she's like, she's not ready yet, even though she's 88. But yeah, we have dreams where we do connect with our loved ones, and also, our loved ones kind of watch over us as well. I remember a friend of mine, he had a terrible motorcycle accident, and he left his body, and he was surrounded by his relatives. He saw the white light when surrounded by his relatives, and they said, well, are you coming, or are you going to stay? And he said, well, I kind of want to stay. And then he came back into his body. So, so our loved ones do watch us, the spirit guides that we have that watch us. I had an incident in London when I was driving, and I reached a cross section, and I was about to go, and this voice suddenly said, brake. And I pushed the brake. I don't know why. And this truck came whizzing by. Now, if I'd moved forward, I would have been crushed or killed. So, there are other, higher elements or guides or relatives that do watch over us as well. So that's kind of reassuring. I don't think it's necessary to contact them, but for the listeners can rest assured that we have benevolent people that watch over us. Speaking of future dreams, again, my sister, I believe, is very psychic. She had a dream when she was 10 that she was in a festival where she saw the Virgin statue of the Virgin Mary, and she was raised as an Orthodox Muslim. So she asked my mother. She said, "Are we Christian?" And she said, "No." She said, "Are you sure?" She said, "Yeah, we're not Christian." And then years later, she had a lifelong dream to go to Machu Picchu in Peru, and she attended this carnival. And sure enough, there was a statue of the Virgin Mary as the procession went by. And she remembered that in a dream, close to 40 years before that.
Oh, yeah. I recently had an experience similar because I was going through an old dream dictionary, and there was a certain person in my dream back in 2001 that said, "I can't talk to you until I finish selling these T-shirts." I was like, okay. So fast forward to this year, and this person is now selling T-shirts. And I was just kind of like, oh, all right, explain that one. You can't. I mean, sometimes they are future events. I mean, even the month before my husband died, I had a dream that we were in the parking lot. There's a parking lot for a shopping center, and in real life, we were in Burger King, which is next to this parking lot. But in this dream, we were in the parking lot, a tornado came, picked up the car, and I'm like, I don't want to die. And then set it down and took us to a hospital, there was a hospital, and it was a red brick building. So in reality, we were in the parking lot at Burger King because his sugar was low. This was during COVID. He did not have COVID. He died of a heart problem. But he basically, in the car, died, and they took him, they revived him at the hospital, but it was a red brick building, and I had it almost a month to the day of him dying. So I mean, sometimes it can be immediate, sometimes it can be much longer in between. And I think that's the thing. It's like, if we actually pay attention to our dreams, sometimes, yes, it's the symbols, and that's a lot of people get lost. They're like looking for those symbols that's in the dream dictionary. But the thing about that is, sometimes a symbol isn't going to mean the same thing. A cardinal may mean something else to you. Maybe it was your grandmother's favorite bird. Maybe, a flower was your dad's favorite. It doesn't mean necessarily what is in that dream dictionary. While they're great, and sometimes that symbolism does ring true, sometimes that message is more personal to you.
Yeah, absolutely. And the thing that, again, coming back to intuition, is, again, you have to delve into your intuition and find out, instead of making your own conclusions, is find out what your sixth sense is telling you about that particular experience or that particular dream. Absolutely.
Especially when that dream feels real. Because I know we've all had those dreams where they feel real. And sometimes I do believe when they feel that real, you're actually astral traveling. And I know somebody most likely is going, wow, she's jumped the shark. But here's the thing. As you were saying about going to different realms, if they feel so real that you feel like you've connected with somebody, how can you question that?
And another thing that people have to understand is that when we die or we project to these different realms, they're just as physical as the physical realm. They're just on a different vibrational sequence. And if we go on that same vibrational sequence, my yogi master projected consciously to these other realms. And he says, if you sit on a chair, it will be a solid wooden chair. And if you hit your head against a brick wall, you will hurt your head, because you're actually on that realm, in that vibration, conforming to that vibration. And they're just as physical as the physical realm that we live in.
I would agree.
So, yeah. And he said, and being a yogi master, he's projected to these realms. He said there's 6 levels above us and 4 levels below us. The lower levels are called the lower astral realms, and when we die, and there's level, he said this is level 1, and there's from 2 to level 7, and he says when we die, we go to the realms that our vibration sends us to. So again, karma is just, and so if we've been a murderer or whatever, in this life, we will probably end up going into some of these lower astral realms. Or if we've been healing, or if we've been good, we go to these higher realms, which are more pleasant. So we stay on those realms, and then just like here, we die on those realms, and we're reincarnated back. So it's an endless cycle.
And that's, when we look at the bigger picture of that, it is an endless cycle. It's like we have to try to start looking at being better people than what we are. As you were saying, people want war. People are starting wars. And what's scary now is because now you have the religious zealots that want the second coming of Christ. They want this to happen. They think that they're going to manifest this if we go to World War III. Why? Why would you want that? Why do you want people to die? And that's what always kills me. And I don't want to get political, but I have to say this. People that sit there and claim that they're pro-life, but yet you support war, you support guns, you support you don't want to support taking care of a child. So you're not really pro-life, you're pro-birth. And that's where I have a problem, because don't sit there because one of the 10 commandments is thou shalt not kill. And if you believe in guns and you believe in war and you believe in the death penalty, then you're violating that commandment, are you not?
Yeah, it's total hypocrisy to go to church and pray. Like the Russians, Ukrainians, they follow the same Orthodox Christian religion, and they go pray and then they go kill each other. It's ridiculous. And again, going back, we listen to politicians, we listen to the generals, we listen to the corporate leaders, and they're putting us in a path that's just leading us to total chaos, destruction, and suffering. And it comes back again to the higher beings, the higher teachers, and there's no difference between the teachings of Jesus and Buddha and Krishna or all the other masters. They just came in different times, different cultures, but there's basic spiritual laws, like you said. What part of thou shalt not kill don't people understand? And and the fact is that we're all metaphysically connected. We're all one race. And until mankind realizes that there is no Jew or Palestinian, there is no black man or white man, because, you could be a white man in one life and you can come back as a black man.
Yeah.
So, this holding on to racial pride or religion, it's all a facade, because once again, the great teachers have said that we're all interconnected. And if you kill somebody, you bring the race down. Or if you heal and uplift somebody, you bring the race up. And we haven't followed the basic spiritual laws. Love thy neighbor, and helping each other, service. I mean, the greatest religion, I think, now in the age of Aquarius, is service to others, regardless of race, color, creed, or religion. And when mankind gets past that, then we stand a chance of saving ourselves, never mind saving the planet. But I also believe that the Mother Earth is a real living, breathing entity. I believe she's a goddess that's raising her vibrations. And as she's raising her vibrations, I think there's a spiritual awakening that's occurring around the planet, a universal spiritual awakening. And people are bypassing the hypnotic drug of social media, TV, political, warmongers, and people are beginning to think for themselves. So I still have hope for humanity. I really do. But again, the crux of that has to be understanding karma and reincarnation, which should be the first thing that they should teach the children, that you are responsible for your action and reaction. All action and reaction is opposite and equal. So whatever you do, you will get the reaction for. And so those two teachings should be in the first curriculum for children when they go to school, not math or science or any of that rubbish.
Well, I mean, if you taught kids how to meditate and how to be calm and not be so stressed and not be so overburdened, it would be such a beneficial gift, but we don't. And I find it funny because when I was writing one of my books, I had put in there that they went to the Met, and I had this gentleman telling this girl about the ISIS creation story, that whole creation story with ISIS and everything. And I had only skimmed it. And she's like, well, wait. One of the people that was reading it for me as a test reader, she's like, no, you have to make that story longer. I want to hear more about it. I'm like, it's the creation story. Every religion has a creation story. It's the same story, just told differently. And I think that's where we lose track, is people don't realize that some of these stories originated way before Christianity ever happened.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely.
But we're gonna take the Christian version because that's what we're being sold, and we can go to heaven, and that's going to be wonderful. But what if there is no heaven? And I mean, you and I know where I'm where you are with the reincarnation. But for these other people that don't understand that there's not going to be these pearly gates that somebody's going to come and say, hi, come on through. You were wonderful. Just because you drank, you beat your wife and everything, but you came and got absolved every Sunday. You're okay. You can come on through.
Yeah, this lie of, your sins will be redeemed if you follow. I mean, that again goes against the law of karma. Nobody can redeem your sins except you.
Mm-hmm.
You have to take physical action in order to redeem yourself. One person is not going to take the sins for you.
No.
It just goes against the law of karma. And we get everything what we deserve.
Well, I mean, when you think about the whole thing here, okay, so I gave my only son to pay for your sins. Well, okay, so what kind of person are you that you would have given your son to absolve mankind of their sins?
Well, see, it's an easy route that, if you believe, then you're saved, and it doesn't work that way.
Mm-mm.
It doesn't work that way, and like I say, prior to them taking that reincarnation out, that's when they put in the son of God and all this other stuff, which is all a fabrication. And people need to understand that, the truth will come out. The truth will come out. And again, those people who are keeping these truths of reincarnation will be replaced. by karmic law, because you can only get away with so. I mean, you look at all the tyrants; they all went down. Nobody stays in power.
No.
You know, no, they're allowed to for a certain time, but when karma finally kicks in, they all fall down. Doesn't matter how strong they were. You know, Roman Empire, the Nazis, the fascists, the communists, they all went down based on, you know, their dogma of you know, control and murder and pillage, and you know, it just doesn't work. So I think there's hope for mankind, and if mankind doesn't wake up, I also feel that those who do conform to the spiritual energies and conform to the spiritual laws, I think will be allowed to stay on this earth. I think the rest will probably be reincarnated on another planet. That's what my yoga master said. That you know, they won't be able to stand the spiritual vibrations in the years to come, and they won't be even be allowed to stay, because they won't be able to handle the vibrations. So they'll be taken to another planet and go through their reincarnation cycle there, you know, and maybe there are horrible wars and murder and pillage again.
Maybe they get their rapture that they've been wanting, where they're all.
There is a new age coming. There is you know, and we'll be part of it because we'll be reincarnating on and off the earth. But there will be an age of peace and enlightenment for this planet, because she suffered enough with this scourge of mankind, for, you know, raping her for her resources and polluting her body. All that's going to change in the future. And all the financiers, the warmongers, and the politicians, and the corporate entities. I mean, who needs $1 billion? I mean, Musk got a $56 billion, you know, pay settlement with his investors. I mean, who needs that when children are hungry, you know, in other countries? It's total. It's total. Materialism at its worst, you know, greed at its worst. And we are our brother's keeper, and all, you know, wealth distribution has to go for everybody and not just a minority who control the masses. And that's what's happening right now.
I mean, how many boats do you need? How many cars do you need? How many houses do you need? You know, if everybody had a place to live, and we had more humanity, and people are like, well, homeless people, it's like, homeless people end up on drugs and stuff because they can't sleep at night, because they don't know if somebody's going to come in and take them or hurt them. They don't know. And our world is so twisted now, and there should be compassion, there should be love. But instead we have people that want to just rape the planet and just have greed and not any respect for anybody else's religion or anybody else's thoughts, that they are right. And no matter what, they have their voice, and they can go to town on you and dare you say something, especially if certain things happen in the upcoming election. If certain people get elected, here is a fascist. And let's be honest, he's a fascist, no matter what anybody wants to say about it. And I don't talk about him normally, but if he had his way, he's going to be retaliating against all his enemies. What? This is not a president. This is a fear-mongering person.
The true politics, it doesn't matter this country or any other country. They said that true politics has to be based on a genuine spiritual desire, a universal spiritual desire to help everybody, not just special interests. And that's true politics. The rest of it is all rubbish. It's just absolute rubbish. And it's conforming to one side, and you know, just the fact that they have different political systems again shows the madness. Because in the end, you know, there should be just one political system, which is a spiritual one. You know, everybody helping each other, and this planet has everything that we need. There's no shortages. You know, the famine and the starvation and the inequality. Again, we've created that. And the thing is, you and I and everybody else on the planet are responsible for the conditions. We can't just blame it on the minority, because we created these minority monsters that have control of us. I mean, look at debt. You know, if you're in debt, how can you go into the arts or spirituality or meditation, if you're always, paying off your credit card or your mortgage and all this stuff, and those things, the financial system of this planet is designed to crush our spiritual growth. If we didn't have the financial system, which again holds countries hostages, all that's going to break down. I also believe that there will be another world teacher. I don't think it's going to be Jesus. I think it's going to be something even more powerful that will probably land openly and declare himself, and I think it's going to happen when the financial systems of this world collapse and people will be looking to something higher. I believe there will be another Messiah that's going to come, but I believe that it will be for everybody, not just for the Christians or the Jews or the Muslims or even the non-believers. It will be a universal approach till we start realizing that we are one entity. We all bleed red, and we all think the same. We all have the same emotions. We're human beings. We're world citizens. We're not tied down to any race or culture. And the more that reincarnation is taught, reincarnation can be abused. You look in India, look at this caste system, or they see a beggar on the street. Well, that's his karma in his past life, and that can be abused as well. And if they do that, then they don't understand in their next life why they became a beggar, right? Because they ignored the beggar on the street. So that can be abused. But the West is primarily absorbed in materialism, how much money, looking at celebrities and, yachts and boats and, and how rich somebody is. And that's the God that a lot of people worship is these billionaires and millionaires who only have one interest, which is their own. They don't care about the masses.
No, and that's what's unfortunate, because they're the ones that are in charge. They're the ones that they want to create a society. And the fact is, what I think they lose track of is, if you keep raising prices and you keep making it harder for people to be able to afford things, then we're not going to buy your stuff. We're not going to be able to consume your products. And then what are you going to have? We're not going to be able to, and at a certain point, we're going to totally reject you. We're going to, like you said, we're going to reject social media. And some of the younger generations have started to see that social media is detrimental to their mental health. And nobody really talks about that, the detrimental of social media and the instant gratification. And when we go back to the financial systems, I'm a kid of the 80s, or a teen of the 80s. If I wanted something, I put it on layaway. I didn't have a credit card. I put it on layaway. I got to pay it off. I got to buy it. There was no interest. And when they decided, oh, well, we can charge you interest, and we can charge you crazy amounts of interest, and we can make you then a slave to the corporate America, this changes the game. And like you said, you can't focus on your spirituality because you're always chasing that dollar. Because now, and not only that way aspect of it, then we have to have, oh, look at what I have. I have this. Wouldn't you like this? You should buy this. Come on, just use your credit card. It'll be okay.
Yeah.
And so we're always trying to keep up with the Joneses over here too.
Well, the thing people are now realizing that there's, the starvation. But there's another starvation that people are not aware, is that we're starving our souls. And our soul, we're spiritual beings in physical bodies. Mm-hmm. People are realizing that now. And unless we feed our soul with good vibrations, with meditation, with prayer, sending out energy. People talked about an energy crisis in the world. Well, my spiritual teacher said there's only one energy crisis in the world, which is the spiritual energy crisis. We're receivers and transmitters of spiritual energy, pranic energy. And if we resolve that crisis, then all other crises in the world will automatically resolve. So we look at more of the base physical and the care of the base physical than we do our aura, our psychic centers, our soul that needs to be fed on a daily basis. Mm-hmm. So that's the least part that they realize, which is the most important part. because that's what we take with us when we die, you know.
Mm-hmm. And another,
and how many yachts and airplanes are you going to take when you die? You know?
None. And that's the thing I want to touch on too, because something that like for me, being a writer, if I don't write, I can tell my mood gets a little bit I'm not happy. I have to write. And the thing is, when I talk about writing, I'm very passionate about it. I've taught tarot and I've taught intuition and I've taught a writing class. And one of my students who has been there for all of it, she's like, "You're a great teacher at all of it. But when you talk about writing, you're passionate about it." And the reason why I'm touching on this is because as a reader, as a tarot reader, I've had clients come in and I will like, "You need to focus on creativity. You need to create art." And they're like, "But I'm not artistic." And the thing is, somebody told you when you were a kid that you couldn't draw right or you didn't do something right. But the thing is, in your soul, you have to be creative because that is where your soul connects to a different vibration. You're fulfilling by creating something, even if it's just a stick figure. If you're enlightening and you're lifting up your spirit by doing something creative, not just meditation, but creationism, you're going to raise your vibration. And I don't think people realize that.
Yeah, I mean, I think, I was, again, my spiritual master said things like the arts, writing, music, painting, poetry, all these things are designed to raise your vibrations. Absolutely. And young kids are mired in violent video games. What do you think their minds are going to lead them to?
Yeah.
So, we are affected by what we see and hear. And so this mind mush has to stop. And, how many people are glued to their iPhones. You go around, everybody's a zombie now, just looking at their iPhones, looking at their messages or their TikTok. And they're not looking up at the sunrise or the clouds or the birds or the wind. I mean, I've seen families go into restaurants now and the kids are on the video games. They're not even communicating while they eat.
Yeah.
So all that is again, molding the masses to conform to these very, very bright individuals behind the scenes that control the money. Anybody who controls the money controls the world. And these financiers, they're holding countries hostage by lending them billions of dollars, and they charge interest, which is like millions of dollars in interest. So what the countries do, they raise the prices of food and gas and whatever, and the normal man suffers while these people, But again, there's going to be an end to that. It can only go on for a certain time. And karma, when karma says something's going to change, it will change. And I think the financial systems will collapse, and mankind will have to eventually learn that we are our brother's keeper. And these billionaires, walking around. I mean, I hate to say it, but it's pretty obvious where they're going to be in their next life if they don't use their wealth properly. More than likely, there'll be a starving child in Sudan or India or whatever. Again, not to punish them, but to teach them that you can't do these things. Karma doesn't punish; it teaches.
Right.
So it's exact, but it I mean, it's been told that if you murder somebody, you may get away with it with a good lawyer in this life. You may not even go to jail. But in your next life, you'll probably be murdered in the same way. Again, not to punish you, but to teach you that you don't do these things.
Right.
I
mean,
go ahead. The law of man is designed, to help anybody who can bypass the laws of man and have a good attorney or have money, and they can get away with stuff. But they can't get away with the law of karma. You just can't get away.
No, and that's people don't seem to understand that. When you're talking about how they sell us the message, when the Hunger Games came out and the movies were very popular, and I remember my husband and I went and saw it, and I looked at my husband and I'm like, "So are they trying to tell us something?" And then shortly after, McDonald's and Taco Bell and everybody started turning their buildings into gray mass depressive looking things. And I'm like, Are they trying to tell us something? And then surely our economy has gone downhill and everything has gotten darker. And so it's like, I think if you look at the subliminal, you can see that we're being led this way. We're being led to face this. The Handmaid's Tale was such a popular thing. And now we have all this discussion about women's rights and how people would like us to be back in the Handmaid's Tale. So it's like sometimes I think we are presented with these things in entertainment that actually have messages that may be leading us to a different place if we actually paid attention.
Oh, kids are molded from Disney Channel. They buy the same clothes what the other kids are wearing, same items because they've been bombarded constantly by commercials, and so they've got them since they were little babies until they're older, and then they can conform them that way. So there's only one way to break the mold, and that's to delve within. That's to delve within and find our own inner power, our own higher power, and project this light out, because they're saying the darkness shines the smallest light. So if enough people go within and send this power out, we can change. I think the next peaceful revolution will be a mental one. So we have to mentally send out these vibrations which affect everybody on the planet. And by sending out this spiritual vibration, this healing, this power, or whatever we believe in, it's the only solution that's going to help. This Maya or illusion that we're in right now. I think that's the only solution that hasn't been properly addressed, and everything else. I mean, sending billions of dollars to another country to kill people on the other side. It's just an endless cycle of suffering. No war has created a lasting peace, and it never, ever, forever will.
Well, Dwight Eisenhower once said, he warned us about the military industrial complex. He said not to ever let them take control. And that basically is what has happened. Because, when my father-in-law was in the Navy, when he was during World War II, he worked on the boat. He learned to trade as a barber. He learned to work the shop. He learned how to do other trades. Now all that's farmed out. We have other people doing that. And not that he wasn't proud to be in the Navy, but he needed to serve his country. And at that time, things were serious. But now we create war to create war. And I remember being a kid, my mom said, "Oh, we need another war." And I think this was in the 70s. I'm like, what are you talking about? It's good for the economy. And I just looked at her like she was insane. Why does war have to be good for the economy? Human life matters more than what somebody can make. But
well, the stocks of the defense companies go up tremendously.
Mm-hmm.
The war, they love it. They love it. Mm-hmm. You can sell all these arms, and it's all about profit and money. And so if 30,000 children get murdered, well, its stock is up.
Yeah, collateral damage. That's the way to look at it.
That's the horrific aspect of war, and it's a disease that has to be eradicated.
Yeah, it has to be. Because here's the bigger picture that they don't think about. So because you've done this and some child survives and you're the one that supplied those weapons, well, you've now radicalized. Somebody can go over there and radicalize one of these children to make them an enemy of you. And the sad thing is that most people that are in that country, and this goes back to your statement of we are all the same. Most people in this country don't want a war, but yet, if we're supplying and our leaders decide to put us in there, now all of us are now part of that target because that's the name of the game. It doesn't matter about the people actually in the countries. It's what the bigger powers want. And that's what's sad and scary because we think that we have these people that are our people, but they're not. They're beholden.
Yeah, but the thing is, Joanna, you have to understand that is we created these people. Mm-hmm. So the masses created them. So the masses, I think eventually the masses will rise up in peace, and they can only take it so much, and eventually they'll say we're not taking this anymore, and they will rise up, and a greater change will occur, a peaceful change, because like I said, violence only brings more violence.
Exactly. And I wanted to touch back on something because I had a guest that I interviewed recently, and she was talking about, because we got into the conversation about how murder podcasts are so big. And I have a friend who listens to murder podcasts all the time. And, I watch CSI. That's about as far as I'm going to go. And I've heard a couple of little snippets of them. And some of these true crimes are interesting, I will say, but I'm not going to watch it. But she said that she started having really bad anxiety. She was listening to him all the time, and she was having anxiety. She was having fear. And so she tells her therapist, she's like, I'm really just anxious all the time, and I got this fear. And her therapist is like, so what are you watching? What are you listening? What are you consuming? And she's like, oh, I listen to these podcasts all the time about murder. Quit listening to them. So she did. She's like, yeah, and my anxiety level went down, and I felt much better and much calmer after not listening to them. So that goes back to the energy work that we're talking about. If you're consuming something that is of the negative nature, it's going to affect you. If you're constantly bombarded by this negative energy of seeing death. I mean, when I was a kid, they would warn you before something negative came on TV. If you have small children, please remove them from the room, or it's people that are sensitive. That went out the window. Now we put whatever we want, and we don't even care. We don't even care. We just show you. We show you a guy blowing his brains out. There's a video game that I was playing a few years ago. I played it once and I never played it again. And in this game, this woman is getting torn apart by dogs, and you can hear it and you can see the screen I'm just like, I can't do this. I can't do this. And like you were saying, kids are playing these things.
Well, you see, the subconscious remembers everything.
Mm-hmm.
From our initial creation, all our past lives, everything is remembered. So all these things stay in the subconscious. They must come out in one way or the other. Absolutely. So, I mean, if I don't do my prayer and meditation in the morning, I don't have a good day. So I always align myself. I think everybody needs to start with, instead of playing the video games or watching the news, is to sit in the garden and have some coffee and do some meditation, do some inner prayers. I mean, feed the soul before you go out and, into the normal world. And, if enough people did that, we'd have a much calmer world. I think there was some prisoners in Thailand, and they were taught meditation, and the violence in the prison drastically reduced 80%.
Wow. But that's the thing. If you think about, if we did this in corporate America, if we took the time to do this, and we took the time not to get so engrossed in the politics of the world and all the anger in the world, things would be better. I mean, when my husband, he was in the process of dying, I knew so in 2019, we were told he was going to die. He was on borrowed time. So he lasted until June of 2020. But during this time, COVID happened. And I remember when it started getting really bad, when we had the lockdown, he would watch the news at night and he would start crying. And I would look at him like, we don't have to watch this. I don't want to watch this. And he's like, I do. And I just thought to myself, you are actively dying and you're watching all of this, which is just more soul sucking. I'm like, I'm going upstairs to write. And I know that may seem uncompassionate to some people, but it's like I was protecting myself because I was already dealing with his death impending. And now you want to magnify, and I already know what's going on. And my job at that point in my mind was I quit taking him anywhere except dialysis, was he has to stay home. I have to protect him. And so the last thing I needed to know was that this is getting worse and that I may get it and he may get it. And, you don't want to think about those things.
No.
And that lowers your vibration. If you're watching people and all that news back then, it's like when 9/11 happened. Every channel for days, all you heard and all you saw was that. And it was so
the news media have, they're saying is, if it bleeds, it leads.
Mm-hmm.
And it's especially designed, it's cunningly designed. It's not something that's haphazard. The news media is run, I think, basically is run by probably Associated Press and Reuters. They control pretty much most of the news in the world. And so it's controlled by those who control the main media. And if you notice, most of the news is the same around the world because these corporations control it. And the more doom and gloom they can do, the more they can keep the masses down.
Yeah.
You know, there's never any good news. It's all bad news. Even the local news, all they do is scan the police scanners, and they go running there and they talk about this murder or this crash or whatever. It's just endless. So, yeah, we are affected by what we see and hear. So I limit myself. I get enough to know what's going around the world. But, I know people, they have their TV on all the time, 24-hour news, just, mind mushing them. Okay, it's okay to have an understanding have a quick glimpse of what's going around the world, but then focus your other mind on your spirituality and sending out the power and light. That's more beneficial than getting depressed over the news. And again, it's cunningly designed to keep people depressed, just like debt and everything. But we can rise above it. We're given the power these days, the inner power, with the raising of the Mother Earth and other energies that have been, because of the Aquarian age and the alignment of certain planets, these are sending beneficial energies to mankind at this time. So we can make use of these energies and radiate them out, and we can change this planet for the better. We can.
I know we can. And that's what I hope moving forward in the next few years, that we see more positive changes, that we see that man, woman, child, that we are one entity and that we can support and lift each other up, that we don't have to look at you and not like you because of your sexual orientation or because of your religion, that you can be here and be happy, and that we don't have to just keep working constantly. Because let's be honest, eventually either AI or automation is going to take your job anyway. So what happens at that point when nobody has a job? Do we turn into what happened in the movie WALL-E? Did you ever see the movie WALL-E? It's a cartoon. It's a cartoon, but basically, what happens is it shows an apocalyptic world that the world upstairs could not be sustainable because of all the consumerism that we had. So now we have all moved underground, and we basically are all in movable Barker lounges watching TV and overweight because we don't do anything anymore because everything is done for us. And so you just have to wonder, where do you really want to be in life? I don't want to be in a Barker lounger for the rest of my life. I would like to have an enlightened life. And I can't tell you, when you're talking about the sunrise, I remember when I lived in Chicago proper and I had to take Lakeshore Drive to get to my job. And to see the sun come up over the lake is one of the most magnificent things. Yeah. And if we take the time to just look at nature sometimes, we would see how beautiful the world is.
We take for granted the air that we breathe, the sky, the atmosphere that's been developed for us. If the atmosphere veered a few degrees, we'll all be dead. Mm-hmm. Now, how is that possible? It doesn't happen by chance. And the fact that the sun gives us everything that we need, the earth gives us everything that we need. We take all these things for granted. And then, that's what I show tremendous respect to the indigenous tribes of the world that worship the earth, that give thanks to the sun and the moon and the earth and the fruits, and the nature spirits that control the weather. And we need to go back to nature. Like you said, we need to go back to our own heritage, which is being part of the earth, being part of the solar system. We're part of the cosmos. That's what we are. But we've isolated ourselves based on our greed and avarice and control of others. The ultimate power is not money, it's controlling the people. So the people who control the money, they have all the money they want, but they want control over the souls of people. That's the ultimate power. But they can only like I say, Hitler only lasted a while, as did Mussolini and Julius Caesar and Pol Pot and all the other tyrants, Stalin, Genghis Khan, all these monsters that came and led countries to mass murder. I mean, how did their countries fare after that? Didn't do very well. They promised them, that they would have a better life, but in the end, they failed everybody.
Well, and that's why when I look at certain people that is running for president in our country, I look at that. I look at being in high school and learning about the Holocaust and looking at my teacher going, how is this allowed to happen? But then I look at what's going on today with the same propaganda and the same messaging, and I go, well, that's how. Everything okay?
It's just so funny. A pigeon landed while we were talking. A pigeon has never landed on my windscreen. So I thought that was just very relevant.
It is.
My cat's going to go crazy, but yeah, the pigeon is looking inside. So I thought that was very interesting.
It is. It is. But I mean, I see with the same messaging that basically we're headed there if we're not careful, because he's promising these people that we're going to go back to this, this, and this. And these people think that they're not going to be affected. But ultimately, wasn't that the way Hitler played it out? I'm going to give you this, and then
everything is going to be fine. We murder the Jews, everything is going to be great.
Mm-hmm.
All it led to just more mass murder and destruction.
Yeah.
Just based on a lie, total lie.
So hopefully we don't see that. Hopefully, but we have, when we're looking at planets, we have Pluto that's going to go back into Aquarius shortly, but before that, it's going to go back into Capricorn, where it's headed right now. And Pluto is all about destruction. And the democracy has been overextended from what I've heard. So we're due for, unfortunately, the possibility of the destruction of democracy. So I hope not. But
well, I think there's always a thin white line of spiritual workers who constantly send out love and energy, because the only transmuter of war is love, not hatred. So if we continue to send out love, universal love, not the love of, Valentine's Day kind of love, but
right.
universal, and nothing wrong with Valentine's Day love as well. But, universal love to every race and every country, all the animals, all the humans, all the plants, from our heart center, from the palms of our hands, our psychic centers, receiving the energy and transmitting it. That's our natural behavior. But we've ossified these higher centers, and we just work through the lower centers, which creates all this negative and hatred and greed and avarice. So we just need to raise our consciousness and operate from the heart center and send this energy out. And the thing is, Donna, it's so simple. It goes over people's head. It's not rocket science. It's just basic nature. I mean, what does a mother do when a child falls? She picks him up and she rubs. What's she doing? She's sending energy from her hand into the little child's hand and healing him. We're natural healers. Animals can give healing, children can give healing. And that's what we need to revert back to, our natural, back with nature and sending out this love energy.
I agree. There is one thing that before we wrap this up that I wanted to talk about real quick, because you were talking about how politics, the true meaning of politics, is kind of helping others. And when I think back to a person that was president, that had he gotten reelected, how different things would be. And that would be Jimmy Carter, because he had solar panels on the White House that Reagan removed. But Jimmy Carter spent his life helping build houses and helping do things for other people.
Yeah, that's the kind of politician we need.
Exactly. Exactly.
I think the greatest political speech ever made was the Sermon on the Mount. You listen to it carefully, it has the answers to all our problems.
If only we would have somebody that actually genuinely could be for the people. And
yeah, I mean, that's the essence of politics is spirituality, for caring for everybody and not just caring for their political parties or their side, but caring for the other side and taking care of everybody, and not just special interests. Because politics is all based on special interest. People go into politics, they suddenly become millionaires. Where did they become millionaires from?
Well, and let's be honest. While they're sitting there name calling each other, I'm pretty sure some of them go out and have a drink afterwards because a lot of this is all theater. I often.
Well, it's the people in the back that control the politicians. Politicians just puppets to the financiers and the corporations.
Mm-hmm.
We know that.
Mm-hmm.
It's everybody knows that.
It's the Wizard of Oz come to life.
Yeah.
So, is there anything that we did not cover that you want to add?
I think we covered quite a bit. I think we need to end with that positive message that things are going to get better. They may seem to be getting worse, but I definitely believe that the seers of the past and the present have foreseen a beautiful future for planet Earth, and we can all be part of it. We don't have to be left out, and if we conform and raise our vibrations and send this love energy out, we can be part of this great change. And so we'll end it on a positive note.
Thank you, Wajid.
Thanks, Rana.
You might have heard my voice hosting the Better To podcast, but did you know I'm also the mastermind behind the Better to Burnout book series? The stories unravel the lives of Nigel Hartigan, the groovy bassist of Sambuca Fedora, the stunning singer-model Ava Richards, and the suave record executive singer Russell Langford. Love, romance, and drama run rampant as their lives tangle up. But brace yourself, folks, because not every tale has a happy ending. Snag your copy today from most online booksellers. So the conversation with Wajid kind of went all over the place, and it was what I expected because we were talking about the metaphysical. And as we've discussed with several other guests as well, that we are all connected, that there is no such thing as race. These are labels that are presented to us that we are supposed to conform to. And, labels is not a thing I care for. But I think it's a bigger thing that we have to look at, and we've talked about this last time Wajid was on the show, is that if we raise the vibration of not only ourselves, but of the planet to a more positive thing, that means turning off the negative, which is not always easy to do because, let's be honest, anytime somebody drives past a car wreck, you're going to gawk. And that's kind of what we're doing on TikTok and whatnot. I mean, I just recently saw, and yes, I'm taping this episode way ahead because of my move. I just recently saw somebody's spouse on TikTok. They were on a plane, and the fact is this girl who had no business doing it was videotaping them and then saying he's most likely going to a hotel with her. And so then people tag the wife. I mean, granted, I'm not condoning what he did, but is it any of her business to police this person? And at what point are then you bringing sorrow onto somebody else? This is his karma. She may know that he does this. She may have somebody on the side. You don't know the facts. And the fact is, if you're going to police somebody and it's not your business, then, but when you really, look at where we're going, we have to be more positive. We have to quit the train wreck mentality. We have to quit watching shows where people are abusive to each other. I mean, a lot of reality TV isn't reality at all. It's craftily edited, and it's there to make ratings happen. So we watch these things and we're titillated and we're excited because all the drama. But then when you look and you go to a mall, and this was several years ago, but when you go to a mall and you see kids fighting each other because, well, that's what they saw on TV. When does this stop? When do you say stop the insanity? Because we can't keep living being abusive of each other. We can't abuse each other. We have to come from a place of love and compassion. And there was a situation not too long ago where, and I'm going to be very honest here, where I was in a situation where I admit that my house is kind of messy. There's been a lot of drama. There's been a lot of hurt. And I went through, this is what grief looks like. But I was taken back to a moment, and I think I've talked about this briefly. When I was in 5th grade, I was given the Sloppy Award because my teacher was such a bitch, and she decided to pick on every one of us in a cruel way. So I got half of a jackass for being sloppy. Okay. But this is the same woman who in the middle of the year stood at my desk when this was the only private place I had to keep my things, stood there and lined up the kids to shame me to the trash. So each would pass a thing to throw it in the trash. This is pure shame. And the reason I bring this up, and this is energy. So I had somebody offer to come in and help. And I have other people that come in and help, and they help me great. And they're very nice and very kind. And they understand that sometimes I need compassion, that I don't need to be triggered. Well, somebody did come in here. And they came in and they were going to come back another time. And they're like, what are we going to do next time? And I'm like, we'll work in there. We'll work in the dining room. That's where we will work. And the fact of the matter is, they're like, well, we need to go in and look at it. We didn't. We had already both been in there 2 weeks before, and we had both already discussed this. But this person basically said, no, we're going in there. They would not take no for an answer. And then when they got in there, they basically shamed me, triggering that wound that I had. Now, I wanted to talk to Wajid about triggers, but I forgot. But that trigger, and I'm glad it happened in a way because it made me face this, that I do not need to be shamed. At that moment, I was upset. I didn't say anything, and there was other things in place that I was trying to control, that I wouldn't lose other things. So I was respectful. I didn't tell her to get out my house. I didn't tell her what I wanted. I sat there. I took it. My vibration was downbeaten. As my other friend who witnessed this said, it was like a dog who had dug in the trash and then had their nose rubbed in it. What I really wanted to do in that moment, and had I not had the constraint, was tell her to get the fuck out of my house. So I didn't do that. I told somebody else that knew her that I didn't really think that she should come back. And if she did, she needed to watch this. At that point, things changed. The constraints were pulled off. And I have seen the person again, and we've just waved to each other, and that's it. She will never step foot back in this house. And I'm okay with that. But my point of that story is sometimes we have to look at the vibration. And if somebody is willing to take your energy because it makes them feel good, because it gets them off, then that is not healthy. It's not normal. It's not right. Because we are energy beings, and we have to come from a place of compassion and love. And the people that come in here to help me, that's where they come from. That is where they operate from. They understand. And when a person is supposed to be helpful and they're not, and they're abusive, you have to step back and own yourself and be protective of yourself and your energy. Whether that's a boss, a parent, a friend, you have to protect yourself and raise your vibration. I'm not saying be abusive back to them. And I don't want to sound corny and say go high, but protect yourself. Protect who you are. Believe in yourself and take back your power. Because by taking back your power and your control and trusting your instincts and your intuition, you're raising your vibration. So on that note, I hope you guys learned something. And I think you need to pay attention to your dreams. And you never know when that reincarnation may come up in a dream, because it came up for his sister as well and a couple other people, several other people, millions of other people, I'm sure. So pay attention to that. Anyway, I'm resolving my clutter issue. I am. And that's a childhood wound that trigger had to be healed from. So sometimes when we get triggered, we have to face those triggers. And I know I kind of jumped there, but sometimes we have to face those triggers in order to heal and move on. So take back your power if you've given it away. And on that note, I want to thank Rich Sai from 30 Year Audio Productions for doing the audio. I would like to thank Fast Susie for the music. And of course, Wajid for coming on and having an interesting conversation. And yes, the pigeon, which we didn't really talk about on air, the pigeon hitting the window makes me think, stool pigeon? Oh, well, who knows? But anyway, guys, whenever you listen to this podcast, I thank you for listening. I'm sorry if anything offended you about politics or religion. There are opinions. You can have a different opinion. I don't fault you for that. But that's what I have to say. It's my show. So on that note, I hope you have a great weekend day whenever you're listening. And I'll catch you next time, guys. Bye.